Have you ever watched a deleted scene and said, now that should have been in the movie? Sometimes a deleted scene is simply great, or maybe it would have elevated the film as a whole. Matt Singer and I deliberated and came up with this list of 25 deleted scenes that should have never been cut. Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1. The Dursleys were horrible guardians for Harry. They kept him under the stairs, they hid the truth about his heritage, they favored Dudley, but this scene shows him saying goodbye to his only family and humanizes Aunt Petunia.
You didn't just lose a mother that night in Godric's Hollow, you know. I lost a sister.
Part of growing up is learning to understand your parents, and this is where Harry, and us, understand that he was a constant reminder of Petunia's sadness over her sister's death. Number 24, Jaws. Quint is the most memorable human character in Jaws. This bizarre scene where he bullies a kid practicing the clarinet shows that he's not just a crazy shark hunter, he's actually a crazy shark hunter. Number 23, Avengers Infinity War. This is actually 2 deleted scenes that show Bruce Banner merging with the Hulk to become Professor Hulk on screen. Now, we made a whole video about this sequence that we'll link down in the description. This scene lets us actually see Banner resolving his conflict with the Hulk, instead of explaining it away in the sequel.
I put the brains and the brawn together.
The Devil Wears Prada. Audiences may have had a different opinion of evil boss Miranda Priestley if this scene had been left intact. After Anne Hathaway prevents her boss's husband from embarrassing her, Meryl Streep shows a brief flash of humanity. Now, this scene is actually controversial with old school fans of TDWP because they believe it's out of character for Miranda, which might be why it was deleted in the first place. Next up, High Fidelity. High Fidelity is a great film about relationships and the obsessive nature of record collectors. These two worlds collide when Rob finds a bonanza of a record collection that only costs $50.
See the Sex Pistols, God Save the Queen in there?
Yeah, I saw that one.
It's free.
It turns out that it's being sold by a man's ex-wife who's trying to stick it to her unfaithful husband. Now, the scene's not necessary, but it shows that Rob is a man of principle, even when it hurts the bottom line. It also underlines the way music in High Fidelity can be a mediator in the relationships between men and women. Superman Returns. One of the big problems of Superman Returns is that the entire story revolves around something that we never see: Superman's 5-year disappearance from Earth and search for the remains of his home planet of Krypton. The movie was supposed to open with a long sequence of Superman in space, where he finds Krypton, he gets sickened by all the kryptonite, and then begins his slow return to Earth. Now, it's easy to see why the sequence was deleted. Silent, ponderous space exploration was more of a thing they did in the 70s. But it would have been nice to see some of what happened to Superman in space. Plus, all of that kryptonite foreshadows the big action sequence at the end of the movie. Next up, this is Spinal Tap. Now, this movie runs a lean 82 minutes. Only the best of the cast improvisations made the final cut. However, the fabled work print of the film had a runtime of around 270 minutes, adding several new sequences. For example, this scene shows Bruno Kirby's limo driver getting more screen time than he did in the entirety of the actual movie, and it shows Spinal Tap at their bullying, excessive worst. The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers. In Return of the King, Dathomir is a huge jerk to his kid, Faramir. Boromir was his favorite son. Now, this scene actually shows the 3 of them on screen together, so you understand the family dynamic. It also shows why Faramir was tempted to take the ring to his father, and he even repeats his father's phrase,
"A chance for Faramir, Captain of Gondor,
To show his quality.
Basically, it's the Middle-earth version of
Wrong kid died.
Independence Day. Since 1996, nitpickers have liked to poke fun at this movie's ending, that Jeff Goldblum is able to hack an alien computer with Windows 95.
I gave it a virus. Computer virus.
Aliens and giant death rays we can accept, but a computer virus is a bridge too far. Well, it turns out that there was a deleted scene that would have foreshadowed the ending.
They're using that frequency for computer communications. See? That's how they're coordinating their ships.
Next up, Heaven's Gate. Few movies have had more deleted scenes than Heaven's Gate. Michael Cimino's epic western premiered at 219 minutes. It bombed with critics and then was hastily re-edited into a compromised 149-minute version. He was forced to remove the entire prologue showing Jim and Billy graduating from Harvard. The sequence served as an important counterpoint to the main story, and it echoed the epilogue, which was set years afterwards. Next, Anchorman. Adam McKay made both Anchorman movies by shooting a ton of material and then whittling it down in the editing room. There was so much extra footage that it was actually cut into a separate film called Wake Up Ron Burgundy. Now, it's hard to believe, though, that this clip didn't make the final cut.
Well, I got it out of the food basket at the end of the lunch line.
That's the garbage can.
Next up, Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. The original series featured so many crew deaths that being a red shirt became synonymous with doomed background character.
Jackson, where are the others?
But this extended version shows that crew deaths deeply affected at least some of the senior staff.
Is there any chance of getting the Mans back on the line?
I do not think so, sir, but you'll have my best. Thanks. I know you tried, Doctor.
The Iron Giant is already a great movie in its own right, but this scene adds terrific character shading for the film's final conflict. We see the Giant's worst nightmare, literally, and deepest programming, to become a world-killing machine.
You don't even know where he came from or what the hell he is.
Next up, Star Wars: A New Hope. In the original cut of the film, Luke makes an offhand mention of his friend Biggs.
Yeah, that's what she said when Biggs and Tank.
And then in the special edition, Biggs pops up in the final battle.
Hey, Biggs! I told you I'd make it someday.
It'll be like old times, Luke. They'll never stop us.
But originally, there were long sequences of Luke wasting time with his friends at Tashi Station. These scenes threw off the pacing of the final cut, but they help fill in the details of Luke's life and the galactic conflict.
I'm not going to wait around for the Empire to draft me into service. The rebellion is spreading.
Next up, the Wolverine. This is an unused post-credit sequence that teased Logan finally wearing a comic-accurate costume. Sadly, this never actually happened because the original films were more interested in mocking the comic uniforms.
You actually go outside in these things? What would you prefer? Yellow spandex?
But instead of getting a comic-accurate uniform, we got Logan, so I'd say it's a good trade-off. Iron Man 2. In the comics, Tony Stark is an alcoholic. Now, this is hinted at in the movies, like when Tony wets his armor here, but they never come right out and say it. This deleted opening from Iron Man 2 comes real close to making his alcoholism explicit. It would have created a sharp divide between the private and public personas of Tony Stark, and made us question whether this guy really should have all this power.
You look weird. Yeah, you look like you look every day. You look like you have a hangover.
Next, Apocalypse Now. The French plantation sequence where Willard has a surreal encounter with a French family living on the rubber plantation became legendary in part because of the documentary Hearts of Darkness, which detailed the making of Apocalypse Now and offered a few glimpses of this cut footage. The scene is a neat encapsulation of the Vietnam War and shows that the French learned lessons that the United States ignored.
In Dien Bien Phu we lose. In Nigeria we lose. In Indochina we lose. But here, we don't lose.
The Avengers Man Out of Time sequence. A big part of Steve Rogers' story in the MCU is that he has to adapt his 1940s sensibility to fit into the era of the surveillance state. This sequence shows his sad life and how he's having trouble adapting to the 21st century. Plus, the outdoor cafe where Steve is sketching is the setting of the climax of the film, so it helps establish the geography for the third act. Also, he ends up saving his waitress during the Chitauri invasion. This one really deserved to stay in the movie. Return of the Jedi. Now this little scene Jedi clip addresses one of the big mysteries of the Star Wars universe. Why didn't Obi-Wan just tell Luke that Darth Vader was his father? Why did he go through with the whole ruse about Darth Vader killing Anakin? Well, as it turns out, it was Yoda who forced Obi-Wan to keep the secret.
Obi-Wan would have told you long ago had I let him.
Next up, Kill Bill Volume 2. Bill remains off-screen for large chunks of these movies, intentionally, and when he does appear, he's not that much of a physical presence, which makes the ending just a bit anticlimactic. This deleted scene with Bill squaring off against Michael J. White would have established his martial arts prowess, and heighten the tension of his interrogation scene with Beatrix Kiddo. Next up, you knew we had to include a Blade Runner in here, right? The unicorn scene is the framework upon which entire fan theories are built. Its presence, coupled with the origami unicorn elsewhere in the film, is meant to heavily imply that Harrison Ford's Deckard is secretly a replicant. Blade Runner's theatrical cut was missing this scene, and several others, and generally tried to flatten any moments of ambiguity that Ridley Scott placed in the film. Scott felt so strongly that it shouldn't have been cut that when he got to produce his own director's cut in 1992, he put it back in. Terminator 2, Judgment Day. In this cutscene, the T-800 explains why Terminators cannot grow and evolve. They have to be manually changed from read-only to write mode.
Can you learn stuff that you haven't been programmed with so you can be, you know, more human?
Now, without this scene, the series implies that Terminators can simply evolve to become more human over time. Like Matt Singer says, this is the most important scene in Terminator history, and it's not even in the movie. Next up, The Lion King. Did you ever wonder why Nala was so far away from the Pride Lands when she discovered Simba was alive? Well, it turns out it's because Scar tried to seduce her, as seen in this earlier version of his song Be Prepared.
Of ruling ascendants, our line of descendants will flow through the pride and beyond.
Now, presumably, someone realized that maybe all of this singing about mating was a bit too mature for the little ones. Next, Almost Famous. This is one of my favorite deleted scenes of all time. In this scene, William plays Zeppelin's Stairway to Heaven for his mother to persuade her to let him go on the road with rock stars. Writer-director Cameron Crowe wanted to play all 8 minutes of the song while Frances McDormand slowly comes around, but Zepp turned him down flat. So the scene had to go. Instead, it's included as a bonus on the DVD, which helpfully instructs you to hit play on your own copy of Stairway to Heaven in order to sync the song along with the visuals. And finally, number 1, Aliens. This is the best deleted scene in history. It reveals that Ripley had a daughter who died 2 years ago while Ripley was still in hypersleep. Surreally, her daughter was 66. In the photo Ripley's given, she looks much older than her mother. This really hits home how much time Ripley has lost. Now, these details also fill in a lot of blanks for the character and the movie.
I promised her that I would be home for her birthday.
The theme of Aliens is motherhood. That's why Ripley becomes attached to Newt, and why she faces off with the Xenomorph Queen.
Get away from her, you bitch!
This scene's inclusion in Alien Special Edition makes it vastly superior to the theatrical cut. The movie is just not the same without it. Well guys, that's all our favorite deleted scenes. What are yours? Let me know in the comments below. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Arey.